We've been talking about this all week with those armed homeowners in St. Louis, Mark and Patricia McCloskey. They're still making headlines for defending their own home with legal firearms. And now the Wall Street Journal's editorial board is stepping in with their opinion of the felony charges that were filed against them by St. Louis prosecutor Kim Gardner, with the headline, "The Vindictive Spirit of St. Louis." A progressive prosecutor targets a couple defending themselves, and they go on to call her moves politically motivated, which is what the Attorney General of Missouri said yesterday. Well, the good news is for the McCloskeys, there's plenty of official support for them, including the state's governor, Mike Parson, saying he'll pardon them if they're convicted. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley is calling for an investigation into Kim Gardner's handling of their case. And during an interview yesterday on this very show, Attorney General Eric Schmidt said that he's working to get the case dismissed. Joining us now is Harvard University law professor, Newsmax analyst, and author of Guilt by Accusation, Alan Dershowitz. It's free on Kindle. Great summer read. Professor, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, Professor, as you know, I don't have a law degree. So tell me, why is it illegal to stand in your own yard and hold a firearm?
It's completely legal. It's completely legal both under the Second Amendment and completely legal under the general right of self-defense, what's called the Castle Doctrine. This would be an interesting and hard case if a couple took their guns and went into a public area and start waving it at protesters and saying, "Stop protesting. We don't want you to exercise your First Amendment rights." That would be a hard case. This is an easy case. They're in their own home. They have the right to have the guns they have. The people are coming illegally, trespassing onto their property. They're not trying to get them to stop protesting or speaking. So this isn't a clash between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. They're simply doing what every American has the right to do. If the framers of our Constitution had been told that under the Second Amendment, you can prosecute somebody for standing in front of his own home and trying to prevent potential rioters and violence doers from coming onto their home and endangering their lives or their safety, the framers would have said, that's not what we had in mind under either the First Amendment or the Second Amendment.
I agree. Does it make any difference? The forensics report that came out shows that Mrs. McCloskey's gun doesn't even work. Does that have any bearing on anything?
It does, because it all focuses on the intent of the people who are being charged. If their intent was to protect themselves and make sure that the people who are protesting were deterred from stepping on their premises, that would not be a crime. It's the intent of the people who have the guns that matters. And if they honestly believe, having watched television, seeing previous demonstrations turn into violence, if they honestly believe that they needed to protect themselves, they had the right to do that. The fact that the gun didn't work or wasn't loaded, if she knew that, obviously bears on their intent. But even if the gun was loaded and even if it was cocked, they have a right to do that. What they would not have had a right to do is shoot the gun unless there was some more immediate threat to their own safety. But holding a gun, waving a gun, that's certainly within their rights. It was a terrible mistake by the prosecutor to bring these charges, and that prosecutor must be held responsible. Prosecutors have enormous power. They can destroy people's lives by making false charges. And too many of them are too subject to the whim of the crowd. They do what they think will get them reelected. You know, we're the only country in the Western world that elects prosecutors. And therefore, our prosecutors are much more subject to mob control, will of the mob, than prosecutors in other governments that are civil servants and just try to do the right thing under the law. But that's a knife that cuts both ways, because the Attorney General is also elected and the governor is also elected. So we see a check and balance. And I think the governor and the Attorney General are appropriately checking the abuse of authority engaged in by the prosecutor in this case.
Well, the interesting thing about that, you mentioned the prosecutor Kim Gardner. She's actually up for election in just 2 weeks, I believe. But in a case like this that is clearly political, even we had Attorney General Eric Schmidt on yesterday. He said it's extremely political from her part. What do you do in this scenario, Professor, when you know that it's political, yet they're still being charged?
Well, first of all, the governor has the right to pardon. That's a very important check and balance on prosecutorial abuse. You know, people think pardons are just good deeds by a president who wants to do the right thing. No, pardons are part of the check and balances. If you get prosecutors going too far, the executive branch, through the governor, not only has the right, but the responsibility to check the abuses. And also the attorney general has authority under the law to do what he can do to undo the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, which constituted an abuse. So I think a lot can be done. I don't believe these folks will ever spend a day in jail. If they are tried, any good defense attorney will win this case. I don't care what the racial or ideological makeup of the jury is. No jury is going to convict the homeowner for being afraid and doing what he or she can do to prevent it. And it worked. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was harmed. And we should move on.
The one thing that you said, no one was harmed. I will say this. You brought it up earlier. That we saw this in the Flynn case. You have to hire an attorney. People like you are very, very expensive because you're good at what you do, which means even if you're innocent, you end up spending a ton of money. Professor, as I always say, I learned so much when you're on. Thank you for taking time out of your day to break this issue down.
I learned from your good questions too, so thank you. It's a mutual learning experience. Let's do it again.
Deal. All right. Thank you, sir. All right, school districts across the country have not held in-person classes since March, and right now it looks like there may be the new normal. Jenny Beth Martin is here to tell us what parents can expect as more schools start leaning towards online learning. Then President Trump held his first COVID-19 briefing Wednesday in months, but there weren't any medical experts in sight. Between the school debate and the struggling economy, was that a smart move? Our company's going to weigh in and give you their take. We'll be right back.